long video about the sinkhole. Everyone talks about the earthquake, the big one, the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Magnitude 9, catastrophic. When I started researching this novel, I wasn't focused on that moment. I was more interested in what happens 6 months later, when the news cycle has moved on, when no one's coming. The Cascadia Subduction Zone is real. It's a fault line about 600 miles long, running from Cape Mendocino in California to Cape de Fuca in British Columbia. Geologically, it's overdue. The last major rupture was in 1700. We know the date because of the tsunami it triggered in Japan. The records are precise. When it happens again, it won't be if, it'll be when. What FEMA and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network actually project is sobering. For the Olympic Peninsula, where Port Townsend sits, the shaking will last for 3 to 5 minutes. That's an eternity. It'll be felt for hours afterwards in aftershocks. And then comes the tsunami. Within 20 minutes of the initial quake, a wall of water will hit the coast. But that's not the whole story. I chose to set the sinkhole in Port Townsend because I live here. I wanted to write about the place I know. The town sits on a bluff overlooking the Strait of Juan de Fuca. The waterfront is vulnerable. The historic downtown could flood. The residential areas stretch out into the surrounding countryside, which is rural, forested, sparsely populated. But here's what makes Port Townsend significant for this story. The geography is isolating. The town is on a peninsula. The bridges that connect the Olympic Peninsula to the rest of Washington, the Hood Canal Bridge, the Interstate 90 corridor, all the major infrastructure runs north and east. After a Cascadia rupture, those routes would be compromised or impassable. Roads would be broken. Bridges would collapse or be unreachable. The town would be cut off. I knew I wanted characters who represented different kinds of knowledge. So I created a marine biologist, someone who understands the ocean, the intertidal zones, what food sources might be available. I created a climate scientist, someone trained in understanding the Earth's systems and what's happening at the intersection of geology and climate. I brought in a teenager who documents everything, creating a historical record of what's happening. And, crucially, an indigenous organizer who connects different communities along the coast and carries the traditional knowledge of this land. Each character brings a different expertise, and the novel asks, what happens when these different kinds of knowledge have to work together? When survival depends not on a single expert, but on the integration of different ways of understanding the world? This isn't a disaster thriller. The earthquake happens on the first chapter. It's quick, it's devastating, and then it's over. The book doesn't dwell in that moment of catastrophe. Instead, it asks a harder question. What comes next? Who gets to eat when food runs out? Who makes decisions about how resources are allocated? What happens to his social hierarchies and power structures when the systems that support them are gone? How do people maintain their humanity and their ethics when survival is at stake? These are ancient questions. They're not new to literature, but they become urgent when you ground them in a real place with real geography. I researched historical examples of communities that rebuilt after catastrophe. I looked into mutual aid networks, how communities organize to help each other when governments are absent. And what emerged from that research was the central question. What are the thin threads that hold the community together, and what breaks them? What surprised me most in this research was how quickly social structures either strengthen or collapse. It's not gradual. It's not a slow slide. There's a threshold. You cross it and things flip. Communities that have strong pre existing bonds, that practice mutual aid, that know and trust each other, they hold together. But communities that are fragmented, where people are isolated, where there is no baseline of trust or cooperation, they break fast. Historical examples bear this out. After the 2010 Haiti earthquake, we saw both collapse and remarkable resilience. After Hurricane Katrina, we saw how inequality becomes catastrophic when the systems that hide it are gone. The line between cooperation and breakdown is thinner than we think, and it's not determined by the disaster itself, it's determined by what comes before. The Sinkhole is climate fiction set in the real landscapes of Washington's Olympic Peninsula. It's a story about what we lose and what we might learn when everything else is taken away. Available now in Kindle and paperback. Links in the description. You can also find me at ricardogomez.net.